You are quite a humorous person. But how did you overcome the challenge that you have to start with?
Well, see, you're always given two choices, I think. You can either wallow in what has gone wrong with you and be in a place where you feel awful and terrible and sad and depressed about everything that has gone wrong with your life. And the other alternative for you is to say that, yeah, it's done, and I make the best with whatever I have and whatever I can. And I think every human being along the way always has the choice to choose what he wants. And in my case, I guess I just chose that there was nothing I can do to change the situation I was in. So what's the point in beating myself up and thinking that my life, why did this happen to me? It was just better to say, all right, I'll accept this the way it is and move on with my life. And I moved on in whatever way possible I could. And it's just as simple as that.
Now, you were coming back from a vacation trip from Cambodia, and then there was this bacteria that hit you, and I could understand to a certain extent as a human, one hand is amputated, at least you have another hand. But in your case, after that one hand was amputated, the other hand just fell off. How can hand just fall off like that?
So I was generally sitting at home having a very casual conversation, like I'm right now having with you, and all I felt was like a sharp shooting pain in my shoulder, and the rest of whatever was left of this hand fell off into my brother-in-law's hand. And obviously we were, being shocked might have been an understatement at that point in time. But we just kind of it was more a sense of disbelief that something like that would happen. But apparently it's called auto-amputation, where the body decides that it doesn't need a body part anymore and lets go of it. It's nature at its best deciding that it's important to save your body against anything else. I laughed that day when I had a brother-in-law who came up and said, let's stick it in the fridge. They might be able to fix it back. But I guess that was the only time that we all just kind of laughed to say that was bizarre. But for me, I guess maybe that at that point was maybe a lot more liberating as well, because it was a sign to move on. I'd spent about 2 years, almost 2 years in bed until that point. And for me, letting go of this hand was a sign that I could really move forward. I could go ahead, amputate both my legs, and move forward with my life, because it meant that I no longer have to sit within the four walls of my house. So for me, it was a sign to really take charge and move forward.
And now 2 hands are gone, and next thing is
I have 2 more to go. That 2 done, 2 more to go.
2 more to go, both the legs.
Yeah.
And then you painted your nails.
A bright purple.
What kind of spirit would you have with so much of a positive side to life? I really can't understand, because there are times in my life I felt so depressed. When you talk about auto amputation, I feel like killing myself automatically with the challenges that I face. And here, that your legs are going to be amputated, and yet you still see a ray of hope in your life. How can that be possible?
Well, obviously it's not as easy as I make it sound. And obviously there are days and times where I think there have been multiple points when I was in bed that I contemplated killing myself. But it's going to sound funny when I say it right now, but when I thought through, I had very limited options. Right now, I went through the options in my head about how am I going to kill myself. Now, one was to hang myself, right? Now, for that, I needed it in my hands, and I needed to get on my leg to be able to get onto the fan. That wasn't possible. Secondly, I could slit my wrist, but again, I couldn't hold a knife because my hands weren't functional. I could, jump off a building, but again, I didn't have the legs to do it. And the last option was to eat something, but I knew that for that, I would need an accomplice. And there was nobody that I ever knew who would do that for me. So the reasons why I didn't commit or try to commit suicide was because it wasn't practical for me. But I also think that it's difficult, but you also had the love of so many people around you. Like I had a really very strong family and support system that took me through it. And I think like we were all, it just would have been so awful to disappoint them as well, because they were in there hanging in there for me. And I think, that's what then you figure out that you'll have to make this work. And I think the most important part for me, I feel, through any journey always, is that you will be given the raw deals in life, always. I don't think there's going to be a single person in this room who hasn't had their share of sadness, of being awful, of having lost a loved one, of anything. There's nobody in this. And I always talk about this as having scars, right? I feel that a lot of people ask me why I don't cover my scars as well. But for me, I feel that my scars today stand for my strength. They stand for bravery. They stand for the journeys that I've made. And every single person in this room, I don't think there's going to be an exception, have scars. The scars can be physical or can be metaphorical. But everyone has it. And the minute you're able to share these scars, like we are today, like you talking about your journey, me talking about my journey, the beauty of putting out scars is that everybody else becomes somewhere okay with the scars they have, either because you associate with that scar or you feel that my scar's not so bad and I can deal with it.
That's amazing. And the last one, now you're a marathon blade runner.
I am only a 10-kilometer runner.
Yeah, that's a marathon for me already, And there are people here, might be, you see, when we have problems, our problems to us seem to be the biggest problem in the world.
Always.
And so no problem is too big or too small. And maybe there's someone sitting here either contemplating suicide or they're going through depression. And what is one advice you would give from your own personal journey that after going through so much, you could still dream of running a 10-kilometer marathon with blades? There should be something that in you that led you towards a moment of hope in the midst of a hopeless situation.
Very rightly, I think our perception of our problems is always relative. And when we're in our problem is the biggest at that point in time. But I also sometimes believe that what we today run as a human race for, whether they're jobs, whether they're having the latest cars, whether it's having that home, and I think all of us spend entire of our lives running behind things. And when I was at my worst, I don't think being wealthy, or I could have been Bill Gates' daughter, but it wouldn't have changed the situation I was in. What really helped me get through was the love of the near and dear ones that I had. And that's what gives you hope, and that's what gets you through an adversity. And in our rat races that we lead today, I think we don't invest enough in our relationships around us. All of us are so busy trying to lead our lives that we forget about the small happinesses. And I always feel that the small happinesses is what gets you through life, and having a sense of humor about things. Like, I've been at the worst times while I've been in the hospitals or any of those situations. Like, I was at the hospital once. I'll tell you very quickly what we did. So I'm lying in there, and there was this lady who walks up to me, and I would tell people different stories about what happened to me just for the fun of it, right? Like, sometimes I would say I had a cylinder blast. Some I would say I touched an electric pole, because both my hands and legs were like black, blue at that point in time. So there was this lady who, slightly elderly, and she walked up to me and she asked me what happened. And then I said, cylinder blast. And then she looked at me and she said, how? So I said, dowry harassment, yeah? And this lady was freaking out, and she's like, really? And I said, yeah. And she said, who did it? And I said, of course, my husband. And my poor husband is standing there, right? And then she says, what happened now? I said, no, they're all in jail now. And she's all the more like, and then she sees my husband standing there, and she asks, who's he? And I said, he's my brother. And and I guess, and then we had such a good laugh about that later on, because you just have to find ways to keep yourself entertained, and the world will give you enough of that. But life is not so complicated as we make it to be. It's simple, and we can find love and hope and all of that within our vicinity. We don't even need to go anywhere else. I just think every one of us have to find that, though.
Thank you very much, Shalini.
Thank you so much.
Shall I help you? Wow. That's so nice. Let's all give a round of applause to Shalini. God bless you, Shalini. Thank you very much. Yes.